How does technology affect our human rights? And when I hear you talking about China, when I think about North Korea, part of me always says, yeah, but technology will get us there. You know, if everyone knows what everyone's doing. Am I wrong in that assumption? And also, what other human rights issues does technology bring?
Yeah, well, I think you're right and you're wrong. I mean, there is clearly a positive side to technology in terms of informing us what's going on. So, I mean, simply your mobile phone, the fact that, you know, any place in the world people can take a picture and post it on social media.
Or a selfie video in Hong Kong,
yeah,
right?
We know a lot. There's a lot of information out there. And in fact, you know, when governments try to block Human Rights Watch, say, no, we can't enter the country, there are lots of things we can do to find out what's going on anyhow, you know, beyond, you know, just speaking to activists on the ground, but increasingly we use satellite technology. So we have a partnership with a company called Planet, which literally takes a photograph of the entire world every day. And so we can ask it, you know, give us the photographs of the Rohingya villages in Myanmar that are being burned. These are the dates we think it happened. Show us what happened. And you can actually watch as the army comes in and day by day, you know, burns down the village, clears away the rubble. It's just there.
Wow.
You know, so that's very powerful. We are beginning to develop a capacity to do open source searches. So, you know, when all these people are posting photos or videos on their social media feeds, that's evidence. You still need to corroborate it. You need to make sure it's legitimate, you know, that it hasn't been concocted. But if you can do all that, that can be very powerful evidence, but you got to find it. And so we're developing that capacity. So those are all the ways in which technology, you know, enable us to sort of peer over borders, to peer over the front line, to see what's going on even in places where it's too dangerous or too risky to go, or where we're barred from going.
Okay.
But there's a threat to it as well. And that is, you know, epitomified by what's going on in Xinjiang. But, you know, technology is intrusive, increasingly so. And so we need to develop standards. We talked about, you know, facial recognition technology and the protection of our privacy from surveillance. But there also are issues like artificial intelligence. So as algorithms are used to decide, you know, do you get insurance? You know, or what kind of insurance, what the price of it? Or, you know, do you get bail if you're arrested? Or, you know, various factors that make a big difference in your life. We need to know that that algorithm is fair, and which requires a degree of transparency. Because, you know, one thing we find, for example, is these days, you know, modern policing means you use artificial intelligence to deploy the police to have maximum impact, you know, to be most efficient. So sounds good. Let's look at the data. What's behind that artificial intelligence? And there's this old kind of computer concept, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. You know, so if the garbage going in is like biased practices of the past, you know, the police deployed in the minority neighborhood, and therefore there was more crime in that neighborhood because that's what they saw. The algorithm coming out of that is going to say, oh, this is the high crime neighborhood, you got to deploy there. So you've got to make sure that you're not just reinforcing the biases of the past. And that requires, you know, transparency and analysis that many of these algorithm producers don't want to allow, you know, such scrutiny of. So that's something we've got to be, you know, very attentive to. So there just are new issues coming up. How does social media deal with hate speech, with incitement? And so, you know, the ethnic cleansing in Myanmar was facilitated by hate speech on Facebook. At that point, Facebook didn't have anybody who spoke the local language. They had no idea that their platform was being used in this way. You know, that's an abdication of responsibility. They're now moving to make some amends, but they still are basically doing it on the cheap. They really are not investing in the large, you know, people capacity they need to have the linguistic and the cultural knowledge to identify incitement before it explodes.
Right, which is their responsibility from your perspective.
Totally their responsibility, you know, and they're making a fortune.
Yeah.
They can afford to invest in the people that would oversee this.
So that's Facebook, also the Google platforms, all of these social media and tech platforms as well.
Well, I mean, with Google, the issue is YouTube, you know, which is, again, another form of social media.
Yeah.
But anybody who has social media, you know, it's a great service. It enables us to talk to each other and learn from each other. But there's a responsibility that comes with that to make sure that it doesn't incite violence or other forms of discrimination.
What about data? Do I have a human right for you not to own my data?
Well, I mean, this is another issue that's emerging. And these big internet companies are, you know, essentially data companies, and they are making huge profits over the data that you provide them. You should have ownership of that data. So you should, in a way that works, be able to say whether they can use that data or not. Not these like lengthy legal forms of gobbledygook that people just kind of automatically check because nobody in the history of the world has ever read it. Right. But rather, there should be a simple way to say, are you sharing your data or not? Can I have my data back? Things like that. So I think there's movement in this direction, but the standards are not yet in place.
Which is back to kind of privacy, really. I mean, it's
another form of privacy.
Another form of privacy,
yes.
Yeah. And you see companies like Google buying up all these Fitbits and things like that, collecting all this biometric data. And there's so much data,
which is scary because, what are they doing with that data? And, what if your Fitbit shows, a problem with you? And is an insurance company going to buy that data and say, no, we're not going to insure you? Very possible unless there are protections.
Yeah. Or if there's an accidental leak, and then all of a sudden that's out there,
right.
And some actuary says, well, let's just not insure these people. And that's what we're seeing all these leaks today. You might think your information's all private, but then it's not. And then what are the consequences?
Yeah, I mean, even, intelligence agencies are being hacked.
Yeah.
So, the idea that any of this is safe is fiction.